You're listening to the Art of Greatness podcast, episode number 33. Welcome to the Art of Greatness podcast. My name is June Allen, your sister in service from juneallen.net. On this show, I empower non-white listeners to prioritize their racial wellness and emotional sobriety. The platform is for educational purposes, is based on my experiences, and is shared in good faith. Always consult your doctor, therapist, or licensed mental health professional before applying any of the suggestions given within this platform. The vision is to build a blackalicious life of empowerment so there can be peace. Now on with the show. Greetings family, greetings. June Allen here. Welcome to the Art of Greatness. Thank you for joining me today. And in this episode, we are continuing our conversation about the 7 keys to Black empowerment. And this week we are talking about key number 6, which is to respect the process. We have to respect the healing process. Now, full disclosure, I am not going to give you a whole heap of spiel about this mastermind that I've got coming up this weekend, about how it's going to make you feel all of these different things and everything's going to be perfect in 6 weeks. That's not how the healing process works. I know there are a lot of other people out there that will tell you that they can do all these things in such a short space of time, and they give you a lot of motivational fluff, which quite frankly sometimes I find really quite annoying because it's not the truth. Full disclosure, healing takes time, it takes patience, it takes guts, and it takes courage. Public service announcement, there is no quick fix to heal. There's no quick fix. You know, if it took us all of this time to get into the state that we are at the moment, there's no way that you're just going to snap your fingers and this stuff is going to happen overnight. It just doesn't work like that. It becomes, you know, a lot of the behaviours, the dysfunctional behaviours that we do, you know, we're a survival mechanism. We did it to survive, and so that's kind of like our default behaviour. So now, in order to respect the process, we have to respect the fact that it's going to take time for us to undo it. And there may be times when we get stressed where we revert back to the old behaviour because that's what we're used to doing. We have to make the time and we have to find the compassion to forgive ourselves and give ourselves the time to practice the new behaviour that we've learned that is actually going to nurture us. Now, in order to respect the process, we just have to, there has to be an element of surrendering to how we feel on a daily basis, and that can be really hard because at times, especially if we're not used to being connected to our feelings, it can sometimes feel quite overwhelming when we do feel them. But once you understand your feelings and understand your needs, and you have the tools to begin to start processing those things, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to accept the process, to surrender to the process, because you've got ways that you know how to manage your feelings and deal with difficult challenges when they come up. Now, I see a lot of people who are stuck in that process of they can't actually feel their feelings. They're disconnected from their own feelings. So then what tends to happen is that they tend to get caught up in the trap of obsessing about other people. They want other people to change. They want their parents to change. They want white supremacy to change. They want white people to change their behaviour. And instead of obsessing about other people, you don't take responsibility for how you enable it. An important part of the process, of respecting this process, is to keep bringing it back to yourself. What's your part in the situation? There's always a layer that is your part, and that's the part what you have to focus on. Obviously, we can't do anything about how white people behave or how white supremacy behaves in that respect, but we can choose how we respond to it. We can choose how we set boundaries. Last week I talked about boundaries, and you can take care of yourself and respect the process by using the tools, and setting boundaries is one of those tools. You can come out of that place of being a victim and use the tools, that's what's available to you, to become empowered. Don't get stuck in that process of obsessing about what white supremacy is doing, thinking that is part of the process, because that process is going to just lead you down a rabbit hole, and ultimately you're always going to end up frustrated, because then your empowerment is reliant on how white people behave or how your dysfunctional family behave or whatever. You've got to take responsibility for yourself. That is what respecting the process is, and there's no shortcut around that. You have to just do the work on yourself. Surrendering to the process was one of the, and still is sometimes, one of the most difficult things about this healing process, because it's a loss of control, and it's sometimes there's so much feeling there, and sometimes I get so overwhelmed by the feeling, and I'm just not used to it, and that in of itself can hinder people from wanting to take the step to change. But the thing is, ignoring that stuff is not going to make the situation any better, because ultimately all of those feelings, all of that energy that gets built up is going to leak out somewhere in your life anyway, be it in relationships or work or the way you treat yourself, or that energy is going to go somewhere. So it is really important to use the tools, use your support network to process that stuff so it doesn't impact your life in a negative way. So the fear is real. Fear is real. Fear of change, fear of how other people are going to react to you if you do decide to go through the process. That was a huge thing for me. Afraid of how, if we're talking about racism, fear of how white people are going to, perceive you if you start talking about it. This was something that was a huge thing for me as well. And I love Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She, there's a really quite amazing quote that she says in her book, The ISIS Papers. And I'm just going to read the quote, and it says, "Black people are afraid, but black people are going to have to get over their fear. Black people do not know what is happening, but black people are going to have to learn and understand what is happening. Black people are not thinking, but black people are going to have to begin thinking. Black people are not being quiet, but black people are going to have to start getting quiet so they can think. Black people are not analysing and planning, but black people are going to have to begin analysing and planning. Black people do not understand deep self-respect, but black people are going to have to learn the meaning and practice of deep self-respect. Black people are going to have to stop permitting black children to play with parenthood. Black people are going to have to stop moaning, rocking, crying, complaining, begging. Black people are going to have to stop thinking that rhyme and rhetoric will solve problems. Black people are going to have to stop finger popping and singing. Black people are going to have to stop dancing and clowning. Black people are going to have to stop laughing and listening to loud radios. All of these behaviours and many more have absolutely nothing to do with addressing the challenges and conditions of the open warfare continuously being waged against the black collective." Now, what she's saying is, 100% true. We are in a critical state as a people, and we have to find a way to get over this fear of change. But it has to start individually. There's no point in thinking about how we're going to do this collectively if you're not doing the work individually. You have to respect the process, and you've got to be willing to go through that process on your own. There's only so much that other people can teach you. There's only so much that I can teach you. There's only so much that your therapist can teach you. When it comes down to the wire, you have got to go through that process on your own. You've got to respect that process to go through it on your own. This is where we have to put our big girl panties on. We have to put our big girl panties on, and we have to make the decision to consciously do the work, to consciously go through the process. These things are just not going to go away by wishing and praying and all of that kind of stuff. Spirituality is a part of it, but there's too many of us out here that are hiding in it, hiding in the spirituality, the woo-woo stuff. We're hiding in it, and we're not actually taking action. We think that by praying harder and getting down on our knees harder, that somehow this thing is going to magically go away, and it isn't going to. It isn't going to. I'm sorry to have to break the news, but it is not going to. You have to be willing to consciously make the choice to do the work. And that is hard. You've got to be willing to do it even though you're scared. There have been times when I've been doing elements of this work, and I just feel there's been times where I've actually wanted to throw up because I felt so anxious about stuff, because of the fear and anxiety that I have around speaking my truth. But I'm doing it anyway. I'm doing it anyway because it needs to be done, because it's about doing the right thing. It's about legacy. It's about service. It's about telling the truth. Are you ready to start telling the truth? If you're not ready to start telling the truth as part of this process, then the healing is not going to happen. Healing is not going to happen. You have to be willing to tell the truth. I talk about this in key number 1 of this series of podcasts. You've got to be willing to tell the truth. You have to find a safe space to tell the truth. Otherwise, this process is not, you're not respecting the process if you can't tell the truth. I have to say that, telling the truth, or the anxiety around telling the truth, was actually a lot worse than telling the truth itself. Once I was able to find a safe space to tell the truth, oh my gosh, it was such a relief. It was such a relief to be able to get that stuff out of my system and really understand, because when I started speaking in the spaces that were safe for me to tell the truth, then I really began to understand, the coping behaviours, the dysfunctional coping behaviours that I'd used to keep all of that stuff down, to push all of that stuff down, to kind of suppress all of my feelings. I really began to understand, my own dysfunction. And that is the most empowering thing, because if you're not willing to look at all of that stuff, how nothing's going to change, because you've got all of that stuff bubbling below the surface, and you're not doing anything with that energy. You're just carrying it around with you. You've got to be able to, release that stuff as part of this process, as part of the healing. Wholeness comes from telling the truth and respecting that part of the process, good, bad and ugly. No matter whatever feelings come up, you've got to find a way to release those feelings in a safe way. And when you begin to tell the truth, there will be, there's going to be some element of withdrawal, because when you hold on to something, you hold on to your emotions and you hold on to a certain type of behavior in order to survive. When you stop doing that behavior, or when you start getting honest about that behavior and trying to change it, there's going to be kickback. Your thinking is going to tell you to go back and do the old behavior, because that kind of quote unquote is the safer place to be. And it's not. It's not the truth. But every cell in your body is going to kick up against change. And so there is going to be a withdrawal process, and that's when you really are going to need the support. That's when you realise that you can't do this by yourself. And that's the reason why probably a lot of you are kind of trapped in behaviours that are not good for you, because you're trying to do it by yourself, and you can't do it by yourself. You need support. There's no way that I would be on this podcast talking to you if I hadn't had an amazing support system over the years that I've been in recovery, been in therapy, been to support groups or whatever. I needed a village. I needed a village to be able to work through this stuff. And with the withdrawal, there's a grieving as well. You have to grieve the loss of the needs that weren't get met. You have to, grieve the feelings that come up. And yeah, the grief was such a big one. And that kind of comes in pockets. It's an ongoing thing, especially when it comes to, if you have to set boundaries around dysfunctional or abusive family members and stuff like that. There's a huge grief process that goes with that. Just because the person is still alive, it doesn't mean that you don't grieve them. And I went through a huge grieving process when I set boundaries around, some of my family members, because I had to grieve that loss. My inner child had to grieve the loss of not having the parent that I wanted. And then my adult had to grieve the loss of having that person in my life. It's been a number of years now since I've been in contact with certain family members, and that grief still comes in waves. And you know what? It's okay, because if I'm feeling that stuff, it means that I'm in my wholeness. It means that I'm honouring my humanity. If I was numb to it, then I would be concerned, because it just means that stuff is being acted out in other ways. But I'm feeling my feelings, and I give myself permission to grieve whenever it comes up, because it's gonna come up, especially when there is anniversaries or birthdays or it could be anything. It can be sometimes music or noises. It can be anything that can trigger that grief. And in order to respect the process, I just have to be willing to accept how I'm feeling one day at a time in that particular moment, and that's okay. In week 3 of the Build Your Magnificence Mastermind for Wounded Daughters, this is where we're really going to dig in about how to manage your emotions, and you're also going to have the opportunity to build your own support kit, where you'll learn what feelings are, and what are needs. What are your needs? A lot of the time, a lot of us don't understand what our needs are, because we're so used to, being the mule of everybody else, that we have no idea what our feelings and needs are. So, you're going to get the opportunity to be able to define them. And once you define what your feelings and needs are, that's when you'll be able to get clear on where your boundaries are, and, if you need to set any boundaries. And, that's where the empowerment is. That's how you stand in your truth and stand in your humanity, by defining these things for yourself and then taking action. In recovery, there's a phrase, what they say, that you're as sick as your secrets. And, that is so true, because when if you especially as a wounded daughter, as black people in general, we're taught to keep secrets about the abuse that's happened to us. We're always told, don't chat your business and all of that. And in families, we tell each other, don't chat your business, and we kind of shut each other down around speaking the truth. And even me, as a black woman going to therapy, I'm a bit of an oddball, because I'm in recovery and I go to therapy. It's just not the done thing. But I know that not doing those things is going to put me in a position where I'm going to revert back to the old behaviours that I used to survive. And I'm not doing that. I know what it feels like now to be whole. I know what it feels like to be able to feel my feelings. And yes, it's not always pleasant. Sometimes it's painful. But I am standing in the truth. And I also understand that when I deny myself, when I deny my feelings and shut all that stuff down, because I don't want to feel any pain, I also shut down all the positive stuff. I shut down my ability to love. I shut down my ability to feel joy. I shut down, being able to feel genuine beauty and pleasure just of being a human being. And I don't want that, and I know you don't want that. Part of being human is being able to feel the full spectrum of what it means to be in this body and just experience what it means to be human. So respecting the process is a difficult part of telling the truth. It's a difficult part of being empowered, but it's important. And if we're going to really get serious about rebuilding any type of legacy for ourselves and for our family, we have to go through this healing process. So you have to respect the process. You don't have a choice. Either you're going to recycle the stuff that your dysfunctional parents gave you, or you're going to respect the process and do the work. So they're the only two choices, because whether you do it consciously or unconsciously, if you don't respect this process, you're going to recycle that. You're going to recycle the dysfunction inside your family or in your relationships or wherever. It's going to happen, whether you're aware of it or not. So be conscious of it, take charge of it, and make the decision to respect your process. If you want to find out any more information about the Wounded Daughters Mastermind, you can go to daughters.juneallen.net. Thank you for joining me today. Next time I'm going to be giving you the 7th and final key in this series. Oh my word, have I got a show for you. And I'm going to be sharing the platform with Sister Tamar, who's going to be sharing her experience, strength and hope on how she fled sexual abuse and domestic violence, came over to England from Jamaica, and just now she's standing in her greatness. She's built several businesses. Key number 7 is about service. So we're going to be talking about the power of service with Sister Tamar. So please do not miss that episode. It is, oh my gosh, it is so powerful, and I'm really excited about you all hearing it. So till next time, take care of you so we can take care of each other. Bye. This podcast is sponsored by the Yard of Greatness Empowerment Program, Build Your Blacknificence. A compassionate 6-week mastermind honouring the wounded daughters of abusive black mothers. We're constantly told that we should honour our mothers, but what do you do when she repeatedly behaves dishonourably? Many wounded daughters cope with maternal abuse by venting to others, blaming yourself, and believing that things will change if you just try harder. Deep down, you know that these things don't work, and now you're trapped inside the resentment of being unheard. What has been the cost of that relationship? What has been the cost of you not addressing your pain? How does it impact your ability to love, to thrive? If you're exhausted by the self-doubt and anxiety around your mother's behaviour, I have an opportunity that will transform the way that you feel about yourself and the relationship. If you're scared of hurting your children the way your mother hurt you, then this space will empower you to review and recharge the way that you parent. After the success of the webinar, I'm Scared of Becoming My Mother, wounded daughters of abusive black mothers will have an intimate, non-judgmental space to understand the wound, connect with others, and heal through self-empowerment and self-parenting. If you're a wounded daughter looking for a compassionate space to heal, go to daughters.juneallen.net. The mastermind will launch on March the 10th, 2018. I hope to see you there.